Thank you for tuning in. We're going to go over some basic headlines. So it's now 2024. We're heading towards solar maximum for this solar cycle 25. And for over a decade, I've been concerned about World War III, really a stage managed World War III scenario. Are we going to see this come into fruition, or will it be put into something that is pushed off to the next solar cycle? But if we are to see this conflict, and a lot of people think that we are, I still think that's likely that we'll see it when the sun is most active. So in the news, we see that the sun has just spit out a solar flare, the strongest in 7 years, since 2017. And we're heading towards the April 2024 solar eclipse, the total solar eclipse. And by the way, I think these things, these times are malevolent in nature. They can be spiritual, they can be energizing for you and for me. If we're conscious enough, as for the rest of humanity, we continue to see the increase in possessions, in darkness, in wickedness, in evil. So I'm going to mention some current events that are being discussed. MSN.com is asking how the U.S. would fare if Russia were to invade. Of course, some of my work's been ignored for years and scoffed at, but here we see the mainstream media discussing these things. So it reads that Alaska is the most vulnerable U.S. territory, and notes that Japan occupied Alaska during World War II, noting that Moscow could emulate Japanese operations in 1942. They are said to have captured two of the Aleutian Islands in the Alaskan territory, but in 1943, they were recaptured by U.S. forces. Okay, U.S. plans to defend Taiwan with swarms of drones. We're going to see more and more articles regarding tensions with China. So let's take a look at this briefly. Xi has just said that the reunification of Taiwan with China is inevitable, raising fears of an invasion still further. How can U.S. forces defeat a Chinese invasion of Taiwan if the Chinese sell hundreds of assault ships across the 100-mile Taiwan Strait with little or no warning? Okay, and we've seen top Air Force generals, people in the military talk about a possibility with war with China by 2024, which is the year that we are in now. As noted yesterday, we see the predictive programming from Netflix in the recent movie that has been produced that was number one recently, Leave the World Behind, okay, showcasing Iran as the enemy. I'm looking at this, FBI investigating possible terror attack outside concert. By the way, I saw some news out of Portland. So yeah, it's like criminals gone wild during the recent health event. But even though the lockdowns have been lifted, we still see this criminal element rising within society that glamorizes the takeover of streets and other criminal acts. So this is becoming very popular in the streets of America for intersections to be taken over by thugs, burning rubber, not exactly street racing, although it's called that, although they're really just doing donuts, spinning round and round and round and round. And people that try to intervene and try to get some sleep, people that live in these neighborhoods, in cities like Portland, in other places, they're basically living in a modern war zone. I've said for years that at times the protesters in Portland and other cities often come across as something akin to the thuggish element, the clowns, if you will, in the Joker movie. Those that are burning down the city, and they think that by doing that, that they're getting back at the man. Just like the LA riots, when in reality, they're just making their own neighborhood a shithole. So yeah, that's what was discussed recently in brief in yesterday's recording, was how Netflix is very much programming people towards the dark side, towards criminal behavior of a variety of kinds, towards manipulating behavior, and encouraging people to want to be a dictator, and manipulating them by putting out a lot of distorted conspiracies, because they want people into conspiracy theory. They're not hiding that, but they want to manipulate what the people are looking at. Okay, so here we have the headline. Going to it now. Okay, Chinese women are fed up with Xi's attempts to make them have more and more kids. So, you know what came to mind when I saw this right away? I already shared with you my concerns that there may be some major human trafficking in the event of a occupation of the U.S. And so this is interesting, seeing that China has an interest in increasing its population and influencing its women to have more children, to the point where they're, quote, fed up. So if they're fed up and they're not able to generate the amount of births that China wants, what does that mean? What does that mean for the future of the U.S.? And even if it doesn't happen, this event that I'm hypothesizing that Leon has talked with me about, which I'm going to share again in the near future, even if it doesn't happen in the next couple of years, war is still on the table. This issue between the U.S. and China isn't going away. Our national debt is 30 some odd trillion. It is exploding beyond control. And it's not just coming from one political party. Okay, let's go to this headline. The Chinese government is trying to incentivize women to have more children. A government campaign to foster a birth-friendly culture is appealing to matchmaking events. Many Chinese women are defying the mounting pressure to have more children. And so, it seems like it was not that long ago that we were dealing with the one-child policy in China. And this is something that has been discussed for years and years. And so we've seen a change, obviously, in China. Why is that? Is there a plan? Whenever there's an agenda, listen, whenever there's an agenda for empires to have a massive population, the question is why? Sure, we're told a certain line that there needs to be a certain population to compete with other nations. That's kind of the modern controlled matrix reality they've pushed us in. But often what comes to mind for me is children that will be sacrificed in wars. So, yeah, I'll be sharing with you that interview with Leon again in the future. But I will share with you now, as I have in the past, that whole thing came about because of my own intuitive feelings of this potential event. Not necessarily dreams, but like a waking knowing. The thoughts of the event, and in particular, how the West Coast would be affected, constantly on my mind for years in the 2000s, thinking about that possibility, years before others were. So this is one of the main reasons why I think that it's an important year for me to be reaching out to the people in my city of my birth, in Portland, Oregon. Even though there's a lot of unconscious energy there, there is some potential there with some Portlanders. And it has to do with the energy there. Some people are on a more conscious path, and, I just haven't come across them. But there's also a lot of destructive energy there, and in a lot of American cities right now. It is, unfortunately, the sign of the times. You should strive, of course, to have a spiritual experience with that which we choose to call God, wherever you are on the planet. Don't sell yourself short with grass is always greener on the other side mentalities. As I've said before, there's a lot of unconscious energy off the grid, whereas you would think that people surrounded by trees and space between themselves and other humans would have a more enlightening experience. And that's not automatically what takes place. by just getting away from the city or the population. And there's all different types of dystopian realities that can manifest in off-grid communities, in the realities that are to come, in what is to come, in the collapse of this nation. When people in local communities choose to take power over others that are vulnerable, that unfortunately in some cases become needy because for whatever reason they weren't able to get prepared. And there are certain reasons. There are certain reasons why some people are not able to get prepared. Some people aren't able to get prepared because of a financial reason or a geographical reason, or some people may be challenged with certain realities in which they have to move from place to place to place. That's what I've been through. And I have moved away from a lot of prepper gear. And I just shake my head. It's a lot of wasted money. On the topic of waste, yeah, I feel like I wasted a lot of time on Patriot Radio with podcasts for years when I should have been making documentaries about this geopolitical crisis. And again, right? I've said this for years. Whatever is about to occur is controlled. People want to blame it on the Jews or the Freemasons. I think that it's convenient for people to say that it's this group or it's that group because the ego doesn't want to admit what it doesn't know. And so what we're really dealing with are the unseen forces, that which we don't necessarily see. So it's actually very, very difficult to prove, in my opinion, certain quote-unquote conspiracies, because it's really coming from a place that is beyond human. And a lot of people are resistant to that idea, including a lot of conspiracy theorists. David Icke has put out a lot of good information over the years, but his partnership with Alex Jones and his content has changed a lot in recent years. It's reasons like that and others that I don't follow him anymore. And I don't follow a lot of other people anymore, nor do I go to their websites. It's like you don't need to be constantly consuming conspiratorial content to be aware of the conspiracy, to be aware that something's wrong, that we need to be prepared in mind, body, and spirit. And if we're not growing spiritually, the question is, how are we then being affected consciously by the content that we're reading? Is it elevating us or is it destroying us? And sometimes it's neither, but it can be taxing. It is absolutely taxing on the mind, body, and spirit to sift through and read how insane our world is right now. But regarding the news, which we're trying to focus on right now, I do feel that it needs to be discussed more, but in the proper context. So you're going to see far more commentary regarding China, the Chinese threat. Will Russia invade? Will China invade? From right-wing commentators. They're going to blame everything on Biden and completely ignore how long this has been going on. It's not just the Clintons, it's not just the Bidens, but there's a narrative out there that people are going to get from Fox News that's going to say exactly that. And so what is this all leading to? More and more confusion, more and more division. So they don't have a problem with people being concerned about China, but they're going to control it. They're going to control how people react to it. So, yeah, we saw the article about drones. There is this massive military buildup taking place, military spending taking place with regards to drones and what is expected to take place in Taiwan. Yeah, so going back to the population in China, this headline that I'm discussing right now from MSN, Chinese women are fed up with Xi's attempts to make them have more children. See, this is suspicious to me. And again, why Portland? Because there's a lot of beautiful women in Portland, like a lot of other major cities. It has a history of human shanghaiing and trafficking via boat, right? With the Willamette River's ability to connect with the Columbia Rivers, which connects to the ocean. So you don't have to be a genius to realize that Portland is a target city. Chinese spy ship denied port entry in blow to Z. That is taking place in India. There's plenty of threats from North Korea. I mean, do we really need to even get into all that? Iranian warship enters Red Sea in support of Yemen's Houthis. Again, right as this is taking place, Leave the World Behind is the top movie in the US, right? Featuring flyers saying "Death to America," provided by Iran. There's another video out there. I have been critical of Clyde Lewis in other recordings. Clyde Lewis did a interesting report, however, on predictive programming with regards to comic books. This is something I discussed a few years ago. Maybe I should reshare the video. But essentially, The Guardian released a comic strip. Operation Blackjack is the name. Operation Blackjack. And it shows a series of terror attacks involving a white van with some sort of solar symbolism of some type in the logo on the door of the van. Okay, whatever that's about. And so multiple cities end up attacked. And Portland is one of them in this fictional depiction. Interesting stuff. So that came out in 2010. Even Paul Joseph Watson wrote about the article at the time. So here we are in 2024. We're seeing an increase in anti-Themism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and to a certain degree, you can even see evidence of anti-white sentiment. As I've said for a long, long time, a lot of people are naive to what the algorithms are doing to people and their role in dividing people racially. And so if we weren't living in the modern day computer matrix where people are addicted to their screens, addicted to Facebook, getting their news from social media, if we were living in another time and age, for example, before people judge someone, they would have to take the time to get to know someone. And see, now in this day and age, people are put into all these boxes. I definitely name my program Outside the Box for a good reason. And as time goes on, I see the importance of being outside the box of multiple ways of thinking, but seeing the appreciation in various cultures, various religions, even if they may have different languages or words that they use for the devil and God and other things. There is still the value in learning different things. And we're being programmed in this culture to worship our own flesh, basically, without even realizing it. To not realize where we don't know certain things. You've all heard the quote, the phrase from Late Sue, something to the effect of, the wise man or the wise one is the one who knows that they know nothing. And we live in a society of false higher education, where people think that their degree means that they know more than everybody else. And in reality, this so-called higher education has really indoctrinated a lot of people to be easily programmed to go along with the system and to look down upon others that have made their own way, that have gone their own way, outside the box, outside the system. Yeah, I also noted yesterday that it seems that our lifetimes are artificially short. If they weren't so short, maybe we would have a greater chance of getting certain things done on this planet. Maybe there's a reason why we are in these bodies. living these artificially short lives in which, in the flesh, we are not able to, on the physical level that is, free ourselves from this tyrannical matrix or that which is controlling us. But there is purpose in doing good, in helping people awake in whatever year that it is, in whatever hour of the day, because it is what some would call, quote, the great work. I don't use that terminology a lot, but there is work that the soul is here to do. And so there are constantly humans dying and humans being born. Therefore, we should constantly be engaged in helping people awaken to a greater truth. And as I've said for years, the path to the greatest truth and place of power lies within. So I do believe that there is truth within that we're not always fully conscious of. So if you're looking for the truth and you're seeking the truth, seek and ye shall find. But it might upset you. It might create a mental health crisis. It might make you angry. If you're looking for the truth with regards to my podcast, you're going to hear things here and there that might even be perceived as offensive when they're not intended to be offensive, but just simply to share another view. But that's the brainwashing that just tends to affect the collective, that anything that goes contrary to the vox populi or the popular opinion is deemed to be a threat or unsavory or disrespectful. And that's the Americult consciousness. You can even call it a part of the zombie apocalypse. So there's a lot of people out there pointing their finger at the normies, at the zombies, at the sheeple. There's a lot of this finger pointing going on in this modern high-tech truth movement. Yet we could see plenty of zombie, android, ape mentality in the box thinking all around us in our own movements. It's important to make the effort, however, and let God do the rest. Right? So we make the effort to wake people up to certain things because I believe that we are here to do these things. Because by itself, without that type of a spiritual practice, right, this plane of reality is very empty. It's very depressing. It's very dark. One can easily get caught up in the addictions, in the traps. One can easily be taken over by entities. I think that the vast majority of the human population is manipulated by these entities. I read from various authors that have various faiths for a reason in my private life. I have a book from a Christian or a person that was connected to the church who is an exorcist. Okay, I read another book by the name of by the author's name of G.P. Haggart. Okay, Methodology of Demonology. But then I have another book by a Sufi Muslim, and that is called A Timeless Reality. And there's a lot of wisdom. His website, his YouTube channel. And so I'm selective with what I read. But we've definitely drifted away socially, a society, away from books. Who knows what the future of libraries is going to be? Probably controlled by robotics or AI. There's more than one reason why books have value. And obviously, it's something in which people can share information and ideas without being censored, without being easily blocked. Books are something that fit into the palm of one's hand. They can be distributed. Many of them can be put into a car, for example, and transported across the nation, or in some cases to other countries. And those books can be distributed. So it's my hope. I want to read a few more headlines here. I want to end this rant. It's my hope that one day I can have a larger book that has multiple chapters within it. That is a great summary or overview of a number of topics that I've covered. So, this is from the Houston Herald. Governor bans Chinese and Russian companies from buying land near military sites. Companies from China, Russia, and other countries blacklisted by the U.S. no longer can buy land near military sites in Missouri, such as nearby Fort Leonard Wood, under an order enacted by the state's governor recently. And so that would be Mike Parson. Executive order prohibiting citizens and companies from countries deemed threatening by the federal government from purchasing farms or other land within 10 miles of staffed military sites in the state. The federal government lists China, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and Venezuela as foreign adversaries. But yeah, we have seen a massive increase, from what I gather in the news, of Chinese organized crime in the U.S., and in some cases, innocent Chinese citizens that are Americans are victimized. And we see, of course, other articles, I'm sure you've seen them, about Chinese police stations in the United States. They're not full-on police stations. There's not really very many details about them, really. But it's operating Chinese agents within the U.S., within the borders of the U.S., with office spaces, basically, that are using those spaces to gather information about Chinese dissidents living within the U.S. that are on the radar of the Communist Chinese. Okay, so we have seen an increase in stories like that. And I myself brought to you a story about how down in Texas, I believe the place is Leak City, they were training the Chinese alongside the police in Texas, right outside of Houston. Okay, nobody cared then, and nobody cared now, to the best of my knowledge, that this even happened. And I find that to be a little bit odd. I find it to be odd for there to be some sort of a joint cooperation between the Texas police and the Chinese police for them to, quote unquote, trade tactics. Not only that, but the Texas police chief flew to China to be trained on Chinese police tactics. What were those tactics exactly? What was he taught? I mean, really, it's just kind of strange. So, I think that we're going to see things like this increase. And sadly, it's going to also increase the anti-Asian sentiment. And that's really sad. You know, there's many innocent Chinese living in the United States. Have been for years. And many of us may have our favorite Chinese restaurant where we happen to live. And maybe you've thought also that, some of these places that we have visited for years, in light of the things that are taking place and the recent health event that Trump called the China flu, I've been concerned for innocent Chinese for years in this country. And I've never wanted my concerns about a Chinese invasion, Chinese-Russian invasion, to ever be misconstrued as concern about ordinary Russians or Chinese. But unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. Like with 9/11, because the events of some Arabs that went into Afghanistan from the outside, going into Afghanistan when they're not even from Afghanistan, and launching what they allegedly did, which many people believe was an event that was allowed to take place if they didn't directly make it take place. That is the 9/11 event. And so many innocent Muslims and Arabs and Persians and others that aren't even Muslim but may look foreign have been put into a certain box since that event. So this is unfortunately the state of affairs, the state of consciousness that humanity is in. As we've seen it with the Arabs, we can easily see it with other demographics, with Asians, with other groups, if there is a major war. And of course, think about the many Asians living in America that aren't even Chinese. that could be attacked as well. There was a story about a Japanese diplomat that was attacked in downtown Portland, I believe 6 months ago. As far as Portland, I am homesick for Portland. Unfortunately, there's too much craziness there. I'll be discussing this again in the future, so I'm just touching upon this at the moment. But it has a certain amount of prana, as I said in the last recording, and that draws humans there that want to grow their own spirituality, that want to get outside the box of the stale environment in which they lived in. I also saw Portland trending on Twitter last week. So there's a reason why, not that I know them all, but there's a reason why human beings are drawn to places like the city in which I was born. But humans today are still ignorant to the fact that when places become super popular, all types of elements, including criminal elements, including those aspects of the criminal world that kidnap and traffic women, they're also going to be drawn to environments like that. So my hope is that I can wake some people up to the fact that cities like Portland are vulnerable for a number of reasons, including its widespread adult industry, sex industry, strip clubs, prostitution, perhaps OnlyFans creators. So there's just an energy to Portland that's very sexual. Not to demonize it, but to highlight there's going to be certain areas in America that I suspect are going to be very problematic during the collapse. So Putin threatens to deal with U.S. and Western allies in chilling new warning. Putin argued that the West is working in opposition to the existence of Russia and should be seen as Moscow's true army. By the way, Alex Jones went on Russian media, Russian TV last month. So he has been associated with Russia for years. Okay, and Russia has, I think, directed a number of its trolls at Portland for years for some reason that we don't understand. Antifa exists across the U.S. They seem to be particularly problematic in Portland. I think there's another reason why the far right has been targeting Portland, Oregon. So we talked about the potential of human trafficking regarding the women that live there. What other reasons could there be for the potential targeting of Portland? Right? That includes a military targeting of Portland, Oregon in the event of World War III. See, these are thoughts that I had while living there. And as we get closer to these events, I look at the chaos unfolding there and other places, and definitely seems by design for there to be such social media algorithmic manipulation, for people to be losing their shit with the modern day protests. And things have lightened up protest wise in recent years, but we're probably going to see a return of massive demonstrations. Also, being that we're in the solar maximum cycle and that we're in a political cycle. So yeah, we've got articles here about Putin threatening the U.S. Every week we're seeing this. Hostage details for 55 days held in Gaza. That's from CNN. Now, there's a lot of people that say that CNN is fake news, but in some cases, they're going to go along with that headline because that is a part of the official story. There is a sentiment out there that's rising that is challenging the official story that is being provided regarding what went down on October 7th. So we're always going to see CNN get in line with Israel and the bottom line regarding war, and especially when it comes to Middle Eastern countries and various places. They're seen as like this woke, anti-racist, leftist network, and that's definitely how they portray themselves in this staged, managed left-right paradigm. But it's a smokescreen. Chinese military to U.S. We urge the U.S. to stop arming Taiwan under any excuses. Chinese Defense Ministry criticized the U.S. for its alleged interference in the Asia-Pacific region, accusing it of maintaining a Cold War mindset and aiming to maintain hegemony. Despite recent talks, top military officials from both countries, China remains skeptical and has urged the U.S. to take concrete actions to promote a stable military relationship. What China may have learned from Pearl Harbor. Washington Examiner. The best way to defeat an enemy is to never let it get into the battlefield in the first place. Japan tried to do that to the U.S. Navy at Pearl Harbor in 1941. No doubt Beijing will be thinking along the same lines as it attempted to keep the United States out of any fight over Taiwan. And of course, there could be retaliatory actions on the mainland in the U.S. And as we covered here today, if there is a shortage of women in China, is that going to be a greater motivating factor, if you will, for China to invade America and take prisoners? I've been speculating about that for years, and I will be back in the future with more recordings. Thank you for tuning in, and hope you have a great day.